Hi, this is Adam from the classroom. In this video, we'll be talking about multiplication. Multiplication is commonly understood as continuous addition. Looking at these examples, we can see that if we add two 4's together, we get the answer for 4 times 2, which is 8. We can do the same with 6 times 5, adding 5 6's together to get 30. It's important to note that it works both ways. We can also add 4 2's together to get 8 and 5 6's together to get 30. We can see that this becomes a little bit of a problem when we get to bigger numbers. The amount of addition becomes cumbersome. Look at 24 times 8. Adding 24 8 times might seem okay, but 8 24 times? That's a bit much. We can use multiplication strategies to alleviate ourselves of this problem. The way we do this is to structure a question in the same way we do addition and subtraction, according to place values. Then we focus on the second number, in this case 4, and multiply it with each place value of the first number. So we start with 4 times 2, which gives us 8, writing that below. Then we do 4 times 1, which gives us 4. Having a final answer of 48, we can look at the arrows to remind ourselves of the order, first red, then blue, as we start with multiplying to the ones place and then the tens place. The next example is done in the same way. First we set up the question and then we multiply 5 with 5 to get 25. Now, as we've seen in addition, the 2 can't be kept down, so it has to be carried up. So we carry it to above the 3. Now when we do 3 times 5, we get 15. So we have to add the 2 to the result. 15 plus 2 gives us 17, which leaves us with a final answer of 175. Let's look at one more example. We set it up as usual and start by multiplying 6 with 7, giving us 42. Again, as before, the 4 can't stay down, so we have to carry it up. Then we do 7 times 2, which gives us 14, and add the 4, making it 18, giving us a final answer of 182. Pretty simple to start with, I'd say, but if you need to run through it again, be my guest. Now, there is another method to solve these questions. This is by splitting each number by their place values and multiplying them separately. So for the first question that we solved, it breaks down like this. 12 is split into 10 and 2, and 4 is just as it is. Then we multiply 10 with 4. We do this by multiplying 4 with 1, which gives us 4, and then carry the 0 over to make it 40. Then doing 2 times 4, which gives us 8. Then we add these two numbers together to get our final answer of 48. We can follow the same pattern while going through the other examples, separating them, then multiplying. Once this is done, we add the numbers together to get the final answer. We can see using this method, we get the same answer as in the previous method. Now this method is often used for mental maths, as it makes it easier to keep track of the multiplication, but you can also use this for written work. Take whichever method you prefer and proceed with it. We'll be going through both methods for all the solutions moving forward. Let's do a couple of practice questions. Take a minute and continue when you're ready. Alright, let's proceed with the first method. Setting up the numbers as we do with addition and subtraction, we know to begin multiplying following the red arrow. Then we go with the blue arrow. 5 times 1 gives us 5, 5 times 1 again gives us 5, leaving us with a final answer of 55. The next question goes a similar way. We multiply 3 with 9, which gives us 27. We then carry the 2 and multiply along the blue arrow. 2 times 3 gives us 6, which we then add with the carried 2 to give us 8, giving us a total answer of 87. The final question is set up as per usual, and then the multiplication ensues. First the red arrow, 6 times 9, which gives us 54, leaving 4 below and carrying 5 above. We can then go for the blue arrow, 9 times 5, which gives us 45. So we add the previously carried 5 to make it 50, the final answer being 504. Now for the splitting method. Take the first question. We split 11 into 10 and 1, and take 5 as is. We do 10 times 5, which gives us 50, and 1 times 5 giving us 5. Adding them together gives us 55. The second question is split similarly. 29 is split into 20 and 9, which are both multiplied by 3. 2 times 3 is 6, carrying the 0 over gives us 60. 9 times 3 is 27. Then we add the numbers together and get 87. Same goes for the third question. 56 is split into 50 and 6, both of these multiplied by 9. For the first one, we get 450 from 5 times 9 giving us 45 and carrying the 0 over. 6 times 9 gives us 54. Adding them together, after lining them up properly, gives us 504. We've discussed at length the 2-digit to 1-digit multiplication. Now let's look at 2-digit to 2-digit multiplication. When we look at this example, the first thing to do is to begin as normal. We follow the red and blue arrows to multiply, starting with the red and then the blue. We get an answer of 12. Before we do anything with the second digit, we need to add a 0 or an x beneath the 2 that we just got as our answer. This is because the one we're currently multiplying with is in the tens place, and 10 has 1 0. Now you can choose to put a 0 or an x. I've always done the x, so I'm a little biased. After doing that, we multiply the 1 in the tens place with 2 and 1 again. Once we finish the multiplication, we need to add these two numbers together to get the final answer. 2 plus nothing is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 plus nothing is 1. So we get our final answer of 132. Let's look at some more examples because it can be a challenge to try and stomach this in one go. Don't worry, if you preferred the second method discussed previously, you can skip over this next few minutes. Now we set up the multiplication as normal. Then we multiply 3 with 4, getting 12, and carrying the 1 above. Then multiplying 3 with 2, giving us 6, adding the carried 1 to give us 7. Then we add the x below the 2 and continue with 1 times 4, which is 4, and 1 times 2, which is 2. Now that we've finished the multiplication, we can look to add 72 and 240. 2 plus 0 gives us 2. 7 plus 4 gives us 11, where we carry the 1, adding it to the 2 to get 3, leaving the final answer as 312. Let's do one more example to really solidify the methodology. We go for 9 times 5, giving us 45, leaving 5 below and carrying the 4 above. Then we do 9 times 4, which gives us 36, adding the 4 to make it 40. After we have 405, we add an x below the 5 and continue by multiplying 3 and 5, giving us 15. Now over here, we leave 5 below and carry 1, and then continue with 4 times 3, giving us 12. Adding the carried 1 makes it 13. We're done multiplying, so we finally add. 5 plus nothing gives us 5, 0 plus 5 gives us 5, 4 plus 3 gives us 7, and 1 plus nothing gives us 1. Giving us an answer of 1755, or 1755. Now let's look at the splitting method. So here we'll start by splitting both numbers. 12 splits into 10 and 2, 11 splits into 10 and 1. Now we have to multiply the 10 with 10 and 1, and the 2 with 10 and 1 as well. 1 times 1 is 1, and then we carry the 2 zeros from the tens over to make it 100. 10 times 1 is 10, 2 times 10 is 20, and 2 times 1 is 2. Having all of these numbers, we can add them together to get our final answer of 132. The same goes for the next question, splitting 24 into 20 and 4, and 13 into 10 and 3. Then multiply 20 with 10 and 3, and 4 with 10 and 3 as well. Then adding the results to get the answer. And we repeat the same thing for the final example, splitting 45 into 40 and 5, and 39 into 30 and 9, multiplying 40 with 30 and 9, and 5 with 30 and 9 as well. Adding these answers gives us our final answer, the same as the previous method. Now here we can see a flaw with this method when it comes to doing larger multiplications, which is the consumption of space. This is one reason why the former method is preferred for multiplication on paper, because it can be more compact as the question becomes more complicated. It scales up very effectively. Now let's go over some practice questions for this type of multiplication. Take a moment and continue when you're ready. So for our first example, we line up the numbers as normal and begin multiplication, starting with the 4. 4 times 3 gives us 12. We leave the 2 down, carry the 1 above. 4 times 2 gives us 8, which we add the carried 1 to, and it becomes 9. After this, we put the x below the 2 and proceed with multiplying with 1. 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times 2 is 2. Since we finished the multiplication, we can start the addition. 2 plus nothing gives us 2. 9 plus 3 gives us 12, carrying the 1 above. Adding that to the 2 gives us 3, giving us a final answer of 322. The next question, 15 times 32. Line it up as normal, begin with a 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 0 carrying the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Adding the 1 makes it 3. Placing the x below the 0 and continuing with 3. 3 times 5 is 15. We place the 5 below and carry the 1. Then we continue with 3 times 1, giving us 3, adding that 1 back to give us 4. So we begin to add. 0 plus nothing gives us 0. 3 plus 5, 8, and 4 plus nothing is 4, giving us a final answer of 480. Now for the final question, 63 times 71. We start with 1. 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times 6 is 6. After that, we add the x below 3 and continue with 7. 7 times 3 is 21, leaving the 1 below, carrying the 2 above. 7 times 6 is 42. Adding the carried 2 makes it 44. Now adding, we get 3, 7, 4, and 4, giving us a final answer of 4,473. Now for the splitting method. We take 23 and 14 and split them. 23 becomes 20 and 3, 14 becomes 10 and 4. We multiply 20 by 10 and 4, and we multiply 3 by 10 and 4 as well. 2 times 1 gives us 2, carrying the zeros makes it 200. 20 times 4, 2 times 4 gives us 8, carrying the 0 makes it 80. 3 times 10 is 30, and 3 times 4 is 12. Lining them up and adding them together, we get our answer of 322. The next one follows a similar structure. 15 splits into 10 and 5, 32 splits into 30 and 2. Multiplying them respectively, we get 10 times 30, which gives us 300, 10 times 2 giving us 20, 5 times 30 giving 150, and 5 times 2 giving us 10. Adding them together after lining them up gives us 480. Next up, 63 and 71. They split into 60 and 3 and 70 and 1. 6 times 7 is 42. Carrying the zeros gives us 4,200. 60 times 1 is 60. 3 times 7 is 21. Carrying the 0 gives us 210. 3 times 1 is 3. Lining them up and adding them together gives us 4,473, as expected. Now that we've covered the basics, we can finish off by looking at multiplication with decimals. Now the important thing we need to remember is that we need to keep track of where the decimal point will be. The best part about this is we know before we even started solving anything. Just by looking at the question, we can see the number of decimal places the answer will have. And on top of that, we don't need to line up the numbers according to the place value when we're working with decimal places. Isn't life just wonderful? The first question is 2.1 times 4. Between the numbers, we see only one decimal place, which is the 1 in 2.1. That tells us the answer will have only one decimal place. So knowing that, we can multiply as normal, getting an answer of 84. We know that the decimal folds with one decimal place, so that means that the final answer is 8.4, where 4 is that one decimal place. The second question, 3 times 2.6, we see one decimal place as well. Here, it's the 6, so the final answer will have only one decimal place. So we go ahead and multiply as normal. When we get an answer of 78, we need to place the decimal point so that we have one decimal place. So the final answer becomes 7.8. The last question has two decimal places, the 5 in 1.5 and the 2 in 3.2. So we know that the final answer has two decimal places. That means we can just go ahead and multiply as normal, remembering to place the x below the 0, and when we finish we get an answer of 480. Now, knowing that there are two decimal places in the final answer, we can put the decimal point between 4 and 8, because the 8 and 0 will become the two decimal places, giving us a final answer of 4.80, or simply 4.8. Now we see from this that the decimal doesn't play much of a factor in the multiplication. It only plays a factor in the final answer. So we find out how many decimal places are there in the final answer from the question and apply it when we're done. So for the splitting method, it's more of the same. We look at the question, see how many decimal places our final answer we need, and continue with the splitting method as we have done in previous questions. When we get a final answer over here as 84, we know that the answer should have one decimal place. So it tells us that the answer is actually 8.4. So we can continue with the same process moving forward with the other examples. We split as usual and throw in the decimal point according to the total number of decimal places in the question. Now this video has gone on long enough. Let's finish off these last few practice questions and move on. For the first question, we can see that our answer should only have one decimal place because there is one decimal place in the question, which is the 3. So we multiply as normal, getting 86, and then place the decimal point between 8 and 6, allowing 6 to be our one decimal place. In the next one, we follow suit. We see that from the question, only one decimal place is there in the answer. So we continue as normal, ignoring the decimal point, and when we get our final answer of 238, we add the decimal point in between 3 and 8, making 8 our one decimal place. For the final question, more of the same. We see that we have two decimal places, both coming from 2's from each number, so we know that our final answer has two decimal places. We continue with the multiplication as normal until we get the answer of 104. Then we place the decimal point between 1 and 0 so that 0 and 4 can be our two decimal places, leaving a final answer of 1.04. Going for the splitting method, it's more of the same. Note down the number of decimal places in the question. For the first question, it's 1. Then we split the numbers as usual, multiply and add up the answers to get 86, then give it a decimal place between 8 and 6 to make 6 our one decimal place, giving our final answer as 8.6. Here are the other questions broken down. Now the second one is run-of-the-mill, but the third is noteworthy. Usually when we have 2 by 2 digit multiplication, we have 4 multiplications to do. When we break this question down, it would be 50 times 0, 50 times 2, 2 times 0, and 2 times 2. We know that multiplying with 0 gives us 0, so we can just overlook those. So remember, look at the question, find the number of decimal places that will be in the answer, solve the multiplication in whichever method you'd like, and then place the decimal point according to the number of decimal places you need. Okay, so the major takeaways from this video should be that you choose a preference for multiplication and practice it so that you can do it in a flash. It's also not mentioned on the screen, but you need to learn your timetables from 1 to 9. This cannot be stressed enough. At this juncture, you likely know 1, 2, 5, 9, and 10 times tables because they're the most systematic ones. So half the job is already done. Learn 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. Practice makes it a lot easier because eventually you'll be able to count multiples off the top of your head. Moving on, if you choose the first method, remember that practice makes progress. Here you can see the first example broken down. Use it as a reference if you need, and apply it to your questions moving forward while doing practice. And finally, remember, when working with decimals, count the number of decimal places in the question and apply that to the final answer of the multiplication. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video was of help to you. Take care, and I'll see you next time in the classroom.